no numbers, there's no pictures, there's no videos, there's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, I'm going to get back into Sunrise Stories. Today, we're going to be going over Spark. So, this is kind of like a, almost like when I was writing this, I was like, okay, what story should I do next? And my next thought was, I should follow Jamie Swift-Song because, you know, I think that was kind of like a neat little tie-in. Like, I thought, okay, I want to do more with that character because she could be very interesting. I don't know, as a character, I wanted to do a story about her, so that was my next thought. So, yeah, this next story is going directly into her story, so directly continuation. It's almost like I wrote it as its own story, like its whole it's like a two-part story, almost like 2 chapters. But yeah, so let's get into it. Spark. I had no time to lose. The goal was simple, and yet, for some, hard to understand. Deliver mail, packages, the usual. But do it faster than any post officer that's ever traveled a mile in Sacred Grove. I was going as fast as I could on those wings of mine, and I couldn't be late to the Snow Hill post office. Luckily, I could see the town from where I was floating, in all its snow glory. So, Jamie Swift-Song, I believe, it's hard to say. I don't even remember if on the wiki, if that's where she came from, but I'm pretty sure Jamie Swift-Song's hometown is Snow Hill, because that's a lot of her character art, and I think for the most part, her hero one for TCG, it's in Snow Hill. So it's hard to say where she's from, but that's probably where she's from. I think I'm pretty sure looking up on the wiki, it says she's from Snow Hill, but let's keep going. I raced to Snow Hill before anyone could try to slow me down. Out of the corner of my eye, the townsfolk tried to wave in my direction, but my job was far more important than giving them the time of day. Before I knew it, I had made it to the post office, and not a moment too soon. So if you think about it, I mean, you know, I'm basically writing a story about an Amazon delivery driver. If Jamie Swift-Song was a real person, if she was real in the real world, and she was, she worked at Amazon or worked as a post officer, what have you, a mailman, mailwoman, if she did that, I think, you could rely on her any time of the day, and she'd make it there. She'd have your Amazon package delivered within the hour, within the minute, even. So, yeah, let's keep going. I went inside and saw a familiar face sitting at the post office desk. He was reading the Daily Grove newspaper, and so I decided it might be a good idea to sneak up on him. I fluttered as quietly as I could and exclaimed, "I'm back, Ernie!" He jumped out of the seat and slid around the floor, flying outside the door right into a snowbank. I giggled and went outside to help him. He looked back at me like he looks at the newspaper, grumpy and disapproving. He sighed and asked, "Jamie, I take it you delivered the packages for the day?" I nodded and said, "Yes, sir, and I got you something from a new restaurant that opened up in Seaside." I handed him a wrapped meal, and he said, "I know you're trying to butter me up, but it's not going to work." He then started taking bites out of the food. So, and this is actually the image. I think I used the same image. Yeah, I probably did. So directly continuing from Riptide, Jamie brings over the seaside food to Ernie. So the penguins are actually, funny enough, they work at this post office in Snow Hill, and I thought, oh, perfect way to include them in the story, because they are actually, out of all the characters I think I've picked up on and looked up and read about, the penguins in Snow Hill are probably my favorite, just because there's actually characters named Bert and Ernie, and they're penguins, and they work at a post office conveniently. Free Realms had some really when you get down to it, they had some really cool characters and unique characters at that. I think Free Realms was just that gem of a game that had these unique characters that not a lot of other games have. So yeah, let's keep going. He looked at him and said, "Well, now that you're back, I have a very important job for you." I looked at him and asked, "Whatever it is, I can handle it in a flash." He chuckled and said, "Oh, I'm sure you'll get it done, but Bert has to go over the details." He hollered for his brother, and he slid on his belly around the corner with fish in his mouth. He said, "Down," and said, And Jamie, good to see ya. I hope you're ready for this job. I looked at him confused and asked, well, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure you're going to tell me. He nodded and motioned me inside the post office. He handed me the Daily Grove newspaper and pointed to an article. He shook his head and said, someone is stealing mail from the citizens of Sacred Grove, and we believe it's one of our own. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked, how do you know for sure? Ernie shrugged and said, I gotta get the I gotta make sure. Okay, Bert has. Okay, here we go. Ernie shrugged and said, we don't, but we do know he was spotted in the Sacred Grove wearing a custom-made post officer uniform. I rubbed my chin and said, someone's impersonating us? Not on my watch. I flew out the door and Bert grabbed me by the wing before I could go anywhere. He shook his head and said, Jamie, you don't even know where to go, and going alone is not an option. I huffed and puffed and said, I will look all over the grove until he's in my grasp. Ernie hid behind Bert and said, she scares me. Bert glared at him, then looked at me and said, you're also not going alone on this job. I froze and asked, what do you mean? He looked around and exclaimed, Josh, bring that giant package over here. He was running at a really fast speed for a human, but behind him was the largest package I had ever seen. He waved and said, got it right here. Before he could say another word, he slipped on the ice and flew right into the frozen pond. So it's not really clear. Like, there's a lot of different images of post officers, and it's not really clear if these two are the same, but I made it work. I think it was really funny. But yeah, anyway, let's keep going. I looked at Bert and said, please tell me, please tell me you're joking. Bert shook his head and said, this could be dangerous, and you need someone to watch you back while looking for this criminal. I wasn't thrilled to be working with someone, but he did have a point. So Jamie's the type of person to work by herself. And also this image right here, that is actually her hero image. That's how I found out she was probably just from Snow Hill. And even if the wiki didn't say it, I was probably just going to include it anyway. Because I think for the purpose of telling a story, this fit really well for all to set in Snow Hill. So yeah, let's keep going. Sacred Grove can be a dangerous place if you're too slow. Hopefully he doesn't slow me down. Ernie cleared his throat and asked, Jamie, can you take that package over to the mayor's house? I nodded and lifted up onto my back. Big package, small pixie. Still, I was able to haul that box over to where it needed to go. I knocked at the door and there was no answer, so I left a note on the package with my seal of approval. I flew back over to Bert and Ernie, then asked, is the mayor out on business? Ernie nodded and said, supposedly on her way to a top secret meeting. I nodded and looked over and saw the post officer finally get out of the frozen pond. He was shivering, looked at me and said, no, nice to meet you. Before he could say another word, I interrupted him and said, your name is Josh. At least that's what the parcel penguins here called you. Bert glared at me and said, hey now, I could have you, I did a completely different voice. Hey now, I could have you relocate the Seaside Ocean for Colonelstad. I shook my head and said, I don't believe that for a second. You need me. Josh chuckled and let out a cough as well. Ernie gasped and said, let's get him warm before you two head out. They headed on inside. I looked at Bert and asked, so where are we going anyway? He pulled out an atlas of the grove and said, you'll be going to the central post office over at Sanctuary. Ask for Phineas Farstrider. He's the one who saw the imposter steal the mail. And I'm just going to point it out here before, we get into that. So Phineas Farstrider is a small character, I'd say small, but he does play a role in Luck of the Draw. There's a point, and I believe it's like right before everything goes to garbage in the story, before the big battle. Phineas actually delivers mail to Bryce, and he also appears again after the whole battle with Darkcheat. So he's a character I wanted to bring back because he is a post officer, and I thought, it might be fitting if he's still around. So yeah, let's keep going. I nodded and waited at the entrance of Snow Hill for Josh. He arrived at the entrance, but it seemed like it had been hours. He waved and asked, ready to go? When he said those words, I had never flown so fast down the cobblestone road. He panicked and said, hey, slow down. There's no need to rush. I halted when he uttered those words to me, flew back in his direction, and asked, "Slow down! Do you realize what we're up against? A criminal, a thief, an imposter! Who knows? We might be too late to catch him! All because you wanted to slow down so we could chat? Is that what you want? To chat?" He stood there for a minute and finally said, "Well, yeah, that sounds nice, actually." I groaned and said, "Fine, we'll do it your way." We started walking towards Sanctuary, and I asked, "Your last name, Josh?" He nodded and said, "It's Josh Flashrod." I scoffed and said, "For someone with Flash in their name, you don't seem all that fast." He laughed and said, "I'm fast when I want to be, or when I have to be, but life goes by way too fast. It's nice to take things slow, like we're doing right now." I shrugged and said, "I don't slow down. My whole life I've been running. I've never even stopped to think like that." He had a slight frown on his face and said, "I don't believe I got your name." I smiled and said, "Jamie Swassong." He tilted his head and asked, "Like pajamas?" And I thought about this while writing. I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna think she's wearing pajamas. Like I think even though she said like Jamie, he thought she meant jammy. I don't know. I wrote that in there thinking, oh, he's totally gonna think like that. I shook my head and said, "It's pronounced Jamie, but sometimes I pronounce it like pajamas. I don't know why. It's the way that's spelled throws me off." He laughed and said, "We'll have to blame the parents on that one, I suppose." I nodded, then he rubbed his chin and asked, "I take it you usually work alone?" I looked at him and asked, "How'd you know?" He shrugged and said, "Post officer's intuition, I suppose. I like to work with other people, pass the time so I can go home and rest." I looked down at the road and said, "I work alone because I can get the mail delivered faster on my own, and because I've been alone my whole life." He shook his head and said, "I'm sorry about that. No one should have to be alone their whole life. But maybe you should consider having someone to watch your back." I looked back up and said, "Maybe one day." We finally arrived at the Sanctuary at the bottom of the road, and Josh said, "Whoa, never been here before." I looked at him and asked, "Seriously? You're a post officer, but you've never been to the capital of Sacred Grove?" He shook his head and said, "I only work with Bert and Ernie, so I usually deliver mail in Snow Hill." I nodded and said, "Well, you'll see for yourself why this place is called Sanctuary." We walked into the city and looked for the post office. The streets were bustling with crowds of people from all over the Grove, it seemed like. Finally, we found the post office and started making our way over, hoping to find the mail thief. We entered the building and saw an older gentleman sorting through the mail. Josh approached him and asked, "Hi, we're looking for a Phineas Farstrider? You wouldn't happen to know anyone by that name?" He smiled and said, "That'd be me, kid." He put his letters down and asked, "How can I help you two?" I pulled out the newspaper Bert gave me and said, "We were told by Bert and Ernie that you know where this imposter was." He nodded and said, "Saw him up by the hill by the Sanctuary tree. He's probably still up there, lurking about." Josh started heading for the door and exclaimed, "No time to lose. Let's go." Phineas shook his head and said, "I can't go with you, but I know someone who can." He whistled something in the back. Out came a Courier Eagle. Super rare to have. But this is the Global Post Office. Phineas smiled and said, "This is Spotter. He's very good at finding mail and looking for people." He handed Spotter to Josh and said, "I'm not cleared for any type of field duty, so I'm confined to the office for now. I hope you find our mail thief and bring him to justice." So this is actually Phineas Farstrider. He does have a real name. This is not one I just made up out of the blue. But yeah, he has his own name. And during Luck of the Draw, like after the battle with Dark Cheat, because he was in Sanctuary at the time, he actually got really hurt during that time. And he was like unable to like do anything. And Bryce found him like that. So yeah, he's not cleared for any type of field duty because of his injuries. So yeah, he's kind of like the old like post officer, I guess, like the oldest one. At least from what I could find. I'm sure there's other older post officers, but like that's the only one I could find in the TCG art. And another thing is like this like Courier Eagle appears in like a bunch of the TCG art, so I wanted to include him into the story somehow, and this is how I did it. So yeah, let's keep going. We left the post office and made our way for the hill. Josh looked at all the buildings and asked, "Why are they all so bunched up together?" I looked at them and asked, "What do you mean?" He pointed out to me that there were no gaps in between the architecture and said, "Snow Hill has separate buildings spread out throughout the town." I shrugged and said, "This is the capital city. Whoever designed the buildings had the idea that this place would be filled with people." He nodded and said, "I suppose, but this is not where I'd want to live." I laughed and asked, "You'd rather stay in Snow Hill?" He smiled and said, "It's a nice place to live, and the people there are really friendly." I thought for a moment and said, "You should take the time to explore the Grove. You'd never know what the places you might discover." He smiled, then suddenly he saw someone that made him jump. He took a stance like he was about to go after him and exclaimed, "That's our mail thief! Follow my lead!" He started running so fast that flames ignited on the ground beneath him. I followed his lead and shot up into the air, hoping to put a stop to this mail thief once and for all. Spotter followed us up the hill, and we were right on the thief's tail. The imposter made it all the way to the sanctuary tree and reached into a mailbox. It was the Queen's mailbox, so I attempted to stop him until he said, "Stop right there, little miss. One more flutter of those wings and I'll burn these documents, including everything in my satchel." I stopped, and so did he. Josh stood next to me and asked, "Why are you doing this? That mail belongs to other people, and you just steal it? What do you have against the people?" He smirked and said, "You only get so far in life by playing by the rules. Me, well, I like breaking a few of them. It keeps me alive a lot longer." I frowned and said, "That doesn't answer his question." He held up the letter and said, "One of these documents could give me the fortune I need to take over the Grove. It's as simple as that. You'll see. Once I have the right to mail, I will rule over this entire sacred grove." Suddenly, Spotter came flying in from the sky. He saw the masked thief and made his way for the Queen's mail. I saw this as an opportunity to stop the mail thief from burning any documents. Spotter grabbed the Queen's mail, and Josh tackled him to the ground. I flew as quick as I could to the satchel he was carrying around, grabbed before he could make any sudden moves. Josh got the thief off the ground and removed the mask from his face, then asked, "You got a name, imposter?" And by the way, I just want to go up real quick. This is an actual TCGR image. Like, there was apparently there was an actual mail thief, and I thought, I gotta include that into the story somehow, but gotta figure out how to do it. So yeah, there was an actual mail thief. Funny enough. Crazy. He smirked and said, "To you, it's King of Sacred Grove, once I'm out of whatever prison cell I'm thrown into." I laughed and said, Stealing mail is a very serious crime. You'll be lucky to see sunlight again." We took him back to the global post office and brought him to Phineas. He smiled when we walked in the door and said, "Well, look what we have here. Glad he caught him, and I hope he told you why he was doing it." Josh looked at Phineas and said, "He wants to take over Sacred Grove, apparently." And I wrote that in like, kind of like, you know, the mail thief almost wants to be like Dark Cheat, like he wants to be like the ruler of Sacred Grove, which I just thought was funny to write in. Anyway, let's keep going. Phineas started laughing so hard that he nearly passed out and said, "Oh man, another crazed lunatic wanted to take over the Sacred Grove. Get in line, you thief. That mail is not for you to steal." I smiled, then looked at Phineas and asked, "So, what's going to happen to him?" Phineas saw his bird come in with the letter and said, "Well, thanks to you two, the royal guards will come by, take the imposter, and throw him in an underground cell for the rest of his life." Josh looked up and said, "Hey, at least he didn't do anything worse than stealing mail." Phineas tilted his head at Josh and said, "Well, I'm not sure there's anything worse than that. But anyways, you two make a good team. Thank you for bringing some justice to Sanctuary." With all that said and done, we started making our way back to Snow Hill. When we arrived at the entrance, Josh looked back at me and said, "We did a good thing, you and me." I nodded and said, "More than good, really. If it wasn't for us, it could have gotten a whole lot worse before it got better." He smiled and said, "Listen, if you ever want to have a partner on your mail runs, I've got your back. Figure you should know that much." I blushed and said, "Only if you promise to go all over Sacred Grove with me." He thought for a moment and said, "You got a deal, as long as you promise to slow down once in a while." On that, we both agreed that we keep each other company whenever we were tasked with delivering mail across Sacred Grove. So that's the story. Kind of a short, like, fun one, just like, you know, catch the mail thief and bring him to justice, you know. But I liked writing the end of it where, like, you know, Josh and Jamie, they both have their problems. You know, Jamie never slows down. She always likes to go fast. And I brought that up in Riptide where Diggy was like, she's got to slow down once in a while. So yeah, Jamie has that problem where she never wants to slow down. She always wants to keep going in life. Where Josh has the problem that he only stays in one place. So they've got a way of helping each other out. But yeah, I liked writing that story. It was a lot of fun. But if you guys enjoyed the story, thank you. And thank you for watching the video if you did. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!